Okay, here's a question with an f of x and a g of x together with their domains. The topic, you'll probably recognise, is a functions topic, and you need to be looking at possibly chapter 1, but mainly chapter 3 of core 3 on this one. Finding the range of a function. The range of a function is normally best to look at its graph and think about the possible y values you can get from the graph. When you're naming a range, don't use the letter x, either use the letter y, or best of all, say the range of values that f of x takes. Moving on to part B, we've got to find the inverse function. That's a standard method from chapter 3. Don't forget to finish off by saying g inverse of x equals something. So you actually use the symbol g inverse of x at the end of the question. To get the range of the inverse function, well, you could consider the graph of that, but in fact it's easier when you're looking at the range of an inverse function, because when you go from a function to its inverse, x and y's swap, so therefore domain and range swap, and you do already know the domain of g. But when you name it, do be careful, don't talk about x. In this case you need to talk about the range of values that g inverse of x can take. Moving on to part C, we've got to find h of x, which is the composite function g f of x, which means g of f of x. And there are examples early in chapter 3 of how to simplify that kind of expression. Once you've got your h of x, there are two ways to go about getting the greatest possible domain of h. One way is simply to look at your expression for h of x and decide what values of x can't be used in it, what values of x would cause an error if you tried to enter them on your calculator. And that's probably the most direct way of getting this 1 mark. The other way to look at this is to say that to be in the domain of h of x, you have an x that's possible to feed into f of x, but all values of x can be fed into f of x, and then think the answer to that, the f of x you get, mustn't be this prohibited value for g of x. So you would need to think, what values of x in that would lead on to a prohibited value for g of x and therefore wouldn't be usable in this composite function. Worth really persisting until you can get this one final mark.